Under there we have, under the lasso tool, we have the polygonal lasso tool. Basically what that allows you to do is just click points, and then it makes selection lines based on those points that you click. So it's good for nice rigid selections. A lot of times it's just faster and quicker to use this tool, unless you have a really steady hand. Under there we also have the magnetic lasso tool. And what the magnetic lasso tool allows you to do is allows you to basically follow an edge. So what it's doing is it's finding basically the contrast of the edge, and it's following it. This tool can be very handy if you have an image with high color or contrast, color luminance contrast in the image. When you have tones that are kind of similar, like in here, the values are very similar. It's very mute in this area. It's having trouble finding that corner. What you can do is just go to the point that you want and just click, and it'll make a point. And then you can, like right here, I'm gonna have to probably follow it here and just click, and then it should pick up again on the other side here. Now you see that I ran to the edge, and I really need to keep going. I can either push it with the marquee tool, and on this case it messed up and it made several points that I don't want. If you hold the backspace or just click the backspace button, it'll delete those points. So that way you don't have to start all over or clean it up after the fact. Ooh. Okay, we had a little recording issue there. So I'm going to add to the selection with the magnetic lasso tool. I just held the shift key down and clicked. And I'll add to the points. Now it can also be pretty time consuming to use this tool, especially in like areas like this. It's just not picking up that information. And I found with the magnetic lasso tool you have to do a lot of cleanup. You constantly have to go back and clean up edges, but most of the time it can get you like halfway there. So it can be a decent tool. And you can also obviously pushing it with my pen isn't working, so I'm going to backspace and click these buttons. What I can do is while in the tool, if I hold the space bar, it allows me to move, gives me the hand tool, allows me to move the canvas so that I can see more of the image to use the magnetic lasso tool on. Okay, those are pretty bad selections, but I'm just going to go with it for now. And you also have the ability to click, and if you hold a shift key down, it'll give you the polygonal lasso tool temporarily until you click again. So if you do need to, well, in the magnetic lasso tool, make straight lines between 2 points, you can do that. You just got to make sure that you hold the shift key down, click. And once you have the polygon lasso tool, it'll make those lines there. So I'm going to go ahead and just double click to make the selection, and then I'm going to deselect because I don't really need that selection. There's a couple options for the magnetic lasso tool. We have basically a width. What the width does, it basically, from the point that you're clicking, it uses that to determine where to look for the contrast areas. So if I increased the width to like 50 pixels and just clicked and dragged, it's going to look for contrast areas 50 pixels around where the cursor is. And then next to it you have the contrast percent. In this case it's set really low, 10%. If you're finding you're having trouble if you're having trouble isolating an area or running the lasso tool around a certain edge, you can play around with the contrast. Usually by increasing contrast, it gives you kind of cleaner lines, but also it might not pick up areas that are very similar, like this magenta color in the water. The tones are very similar, so I probably wouldn't pick that up if I increase the contrast. I'm deselect and try that. Yeah, see how it's staying by the red and yellow, because that's like the highest area of contrast there. I can't even get it to pick the magenta area there, because it's just not enough contrast for it to even recognize. So I'm going to hit escape actually to escape out of that. Frequency is basically how many points, the frequency of points. So if you lower the frequency, then the distance between points are going to be greater. And if you increase the frequency, it's going to try to lay down more points. Usually by higher frequency, like let's say 80, you might be able to get a more accurate selection, but you're going to have, it's going to be jagged. The edges are going to be pretty rough on it. So you have to kind of balance off having rough edges and being close to the actual selection that you want. Okay. Then we have the magic wand and quick selection tool. The magic wand allows you to basically just click an area, and then it'll select all those colors that are related to the area. The tolerance basically chooses from the sample point that you pick how many colors to pick within that range. The higher the tolerance, the more colors it's going to pick. The wider color range basically it's going to pick. And then the lower the tolerance, we'll put it like a 4, and I'm going to Control D, deselect. If I click now, you can see that the selection isn't as large because the tolerance was smaller. Again, we have an anti-alias function here, and then we have a contiguous function. But contiguous, with that checked on, means if I make a selection here, it's not going to select any other blue, this light blue here, light cyan blue. It's not going to pick that anywhere else in the image unless that color is directly connected to my selection point here. If I turn that off, and then I'll deselect and click again, you can see that it picked up areas outside of that selection point in the horizon line. There's probably some in the sky. We'll zoom out, yeah, a little bit in the sky up here. So it's basically selecting more areas of the image than where my selection point was. Most cases than not, you want contiguous turned on, but you do have the ability to turn it off if needed. We also have sample all layers. I recommend turning sample all layers on. Most cases when I'm working, I need that on, especially if you're working in a large layered document and you have a lot of retouching layers and adjustment layers. You're going to want sample all layers on. If you're working with graphics and you need to select part of a graphic and it's on one layer, those are the times that you probably want to turn that off so that you're not picking up any part of the background image. But in this time I'm going to turn it on. You also have, under there, you have the quick selection tool, which is kind of similar to the magic wand tool. It allows you to click around an edge, and what it basically tries to do is find that edge. So it's a mixture of the magnetic lasso tool, where it tries to pick up contrast between edges, and the magic wand tool. So usually it's a bit of a cleaner selection. I can see here that it picked up some of the umbrella that I don't want, so if I hold the Alt key down, I can subtract from that selection.